Welcome back to the channel, this tactical intellectual channel. This video presentation today will be more of a continuation, and to be honest, I'm gonna kind of pivot a little bit. It's gonna be kind of a reaction type video, and then in the end we're gonna have like the final assessment of all the information that's compiled. So with me, I've done a bunch of research. Now, one thing that has a tendency to happen while doing this type of work is that content creators and myself run into the same sources and compile the same information and present the same information if we all wanted to do our own solo videos or presentations. Now, with me, I would definitely want to react to different content creators who are into this historical journey like I am. And I know I would rather play their work. My contribution will just be like the final assessment at the end. So to start off with, I want to go back to that video that I played portions of in part 1, but we want to look at more of the original people of Asia and the Pacific Islanders. So this is the visual here, and just want to set the correct precedent for this presentation that I'm doing. So without further ado, let's go back and check out the rest of the video on the Black Asians.
The Manik of Thailand. Deep within the lush rainforests of southern Thailand is a unique and fascinating indigenous group known as the Manik people. The origins of the Manik people are shrouded in mystery, but anthropological research suggests that they are part of the broader group of Proto-Malayic ethnic communities. The Manik people are one of the smallest ethnic groups in Thailand. Genetic studies of the Manik people have revealed a unique genetic heritage that reflects their isolation and distinct way of life. Their genetic markers show connections to other indigenous groups in the region and ancient populations that inhabited Southeast Asia. The Manik people often have darker skin and hair, well suited to their forested environment. Their phenotype showcases adaptations to their surroundings, such as enhanced visual acuity and agility, which aid them in their hunting and gathering activities. The Molukans. The Moluccan people are an indigenous black community residing in the Moluccan Islands of Indonesia. The Moluccan people's origins can be traced back to Austronesian migrations from Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, with influences from neighboring regions like Papua New Guinea. These migrations over centuries laid the foundation for the diverse genetic makeup and cultural fabric of the Moluccan people. The Moluccan people are composed of various ethnic groups, including the Ambonese, Ternataeans, Tidorians, and more, each with its own distinct customs and languages. Studies have revealed a mix of Austronesian, Papuan, and Southeast Asian genetic markers, highlighting the complexity of their heritage. The Semang and Batek of Malaysia. Malaysia, a country renowned for its cultural diversity, is home to the Semang and Batek people, who stand as distinct groups embodying the ancestral heritage of the region. The origins of the Semang and Batek people trace back to the ancient inhabitants of the Malay Peninsula, contributing to the complex mosaic of Malaysia's indigenous population. These communities are believed to have inhabited the region for thousands of years, preserving their distinct way of life amidst the tides of history. The Semang and Batek people are part of the larger Orang Asli community, which translates to original people in Malay, highlighting their status as the earliest inhabitants of the peninsula. Research has indicated that these communities share genetic markers with other indigenous populations in Southeast Asia and Australo-Melanesian groups. Phenotypically, both the Semang and Batik people exhibit unique physical traits that have adapted to their environment. Their shorter stature, darker skin, and robust physique can be attributed to the demands of living in the denser rainforests and the challenges posed by their traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle. East Timorese. Nestled in the maritime heart of Southeast Asia lies East Timor, a land of breathtaking landscapes and a people whose history is as rich as the diverse tapestry of their culture. The roots of the East Timorese people can be traced back to Austronesian migrations that took place thousands of years ago. This early migration brought together various ethnic groups, including the Atoni, Tetum, Mambai, and Bunak, among others. The East Timorese population is relatively small, with an estimated 1.3 million people. They inhabit the eastern part of the island of Timor, which is shared with Indonesia. The majority of East Timorese are of Austronesian descent. Genetically, the East Timorese people exhibit a blend of Austronesian, Southeast Asian, and Melanesian influences. This diversity is reflected in their physical appearance, with variations in skin tones, facial features, and hair textures. The New Caledonian Kanak people. Nestled in the heart of the South Pacific, New Caledonia is an enchanting archipelago that beckons with its turquoise waters, lush landscapes, and vibrant cultures. Among the mosaic of societies that grace this idyllic haven, the Kanak people stand as a testament to the island's rich history and diverse heritage. The Kanak people, indigenous to New Caledonia, trace their origins to the ancient Lapita culture, known for their remarkable seafaring prowess and skilled pottery. This Austronesian group, believed to have originated in Southeast Asia, ventured across vast ocean expanses, eventually settling in the Melanesian islands. Today, the Kanak people constitute a significant portion of New Caledonia's population, accounting for approximately 39% of the total inhabitants. Genetically, the Kanak people exhibit a diverse heritage, resulting from centuries of interaction with neighboring Pacific Island communities and European explorers. Recent genetic studies have revealed intriguing insights into the Kanak population's ancestral makeup, showcasing a blend of Austronesian and Melanesian influences.
Now, we did see all of that with our own eyes. Now, let's go to the book, Sex and Race, right there. And we're going to look at this part, Negro strain in the Filipinos, Australians, Hawaiians, and other Pacific Islanders right there. And it reads, as was said, there are millions of Negroes in the islands of the Pacific who, in color, features, and hair are almost indistinguishable from Africans. Drop down. Is this Caucasian strain ancient? It is difficult to say how much, if any of it, existed prior to the coming of the white man. Europeans have been coming to the Pacific for more than 4 centuries and have been mixing their blood with the islanders. Magellan the First arrived in 1521. The Spaniards came in 1571. The Dutch in 1616. The English under Dampier in 1669. And Captain Cook in 1770. The sailors and other members of these expeditions mixed freely with the native women and gave them their first visitation of venereal disease, which killed them off like flies. Instances like those of the mutiny on the Bounty, where the white men deserted their ships to live among the natives, were far from being uncommon. Since those days, Europeans have been arriving in numbers and intermingling their blood with that of the natives. One of the first things the white man does on arriving in the South Seas with its dark-skinned, voluptuous, and almost amiable beauties is to set up a harem. Some writers who insist that certain Pacific Islanders, as the Tahitians, are a Caucasian race and were originally so, forget that they had nearly 4 centuries of amalgamation with whites. A large exhibit in the Museum of Natural History, Paris, France, might serve to throw some light on what the natives of the Pacific looked like before the present great migration of Europeans and Japanese to their islands or lands. This exhibit is a large collection of life masks and photographs of the faces of the earlier Pacific Islanders from over a vast range of that ocean. The general aspect of the exhibit is decidedly Negroid, some of the faces being of the deepest shade of black, such as the Solomon Islanders and the Marquesas. These islanders are generally divided into 3 groups: Melanesian, Micronesian, and Polynesian. The first are unmixed Negroes. The second are a mixture largely of Negro and Mongolian. The third, among whom are some pure blacks, are a mixture of Negro, Caucasian, and Mongolian, with sometimes the last named predominant. The blacks themselves constitute an ethnological puzzle. Some, like the Tasmanians, who were killed off by the English settlers, were pure Negro, while others, like the Australian Bushman, though jet black with Negro faces and hair and beards that were sometimes more silky than woolly, and with body hair as thick as if nature had given it to them expressly as a coat. This fact may be noted. There are Negro peoples with naturally straight or frizzly hair, others with kinky hair that is more or less abundant as some of the West Africans, and still others with sparse, tiny beads of hair, the so-called peppercorn Malay Negritos, who are alike in color and features, have some of them straight hair, others woolly hair. Alright, so now, while doing research, I came across a very interesting video. It's called The Origin of Peoples According to the Bible, the Origin of the Koreans According to the Bible. Now, I know not everybody's into the Bible like that, but just look at it as an ancient text, record keeping. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Koreans, along with the Chinese and Japanese, are globally recognized by Westerners as one of the most distinct populations. They possess a unique beauty and a deeply rooted culture. In this video, I would like to explore the origin of the Korean people through sacred scriptures, genetic analysis, and historical narrative. Regarding the genetic origin of the Korean people, despite disagreements among nationalists from Far East countries, it is important to highlight that genetically they are closely related. Some claims by ethno-nationalists suggesting that Koreans would be Paleo-Siberians closer to Europeans than other East Asians are dismissed as complete nonsense and misunderstandings. It is crucial to understand that Paleo-Siberians descend from an initial migration of East Asians towards the north, replacing the ancient Eurasians of the north. These Paleo-Siberians have a closer relationship with Native Americans than with other East Asians, and they were largely replaced by Neo-Siberians and, later, by groups from Northeast Asia. Comparatively, genetic analyses of ancient genomes have revealed that the genetic composition of Koreans can be better described as a mixture of ancient Northeast Asian, Russian, and Iron Age genomes. In the Southwest Asian region, such as in Cambodia, Koreans typically exhibit a genetic composition reflecting around 30% Neo-Siberian influence from Northeast Asia, represented by migratory events, and approximately 70% Southeast Asian influence, represented by indigenous groups isolated in Vietnam and Taiwan. Additionally, it is interesting to note that all East Asians, including Neo-Siberians, Paleo-Siberians, and Native Americans, descend from East Asian ancestors who migrated from Southwest Asia in various expansions to the north. Addressing a common question about Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese, Koreans and Chinese are closely related, especially with Han Chinese. The genetic proximity between Han Chinese and Koreans is notable, being closer than, for example, a genetic comparison between Germans and Italians. The East Asian region, and to some extent, the Southeast Asian region, are notable for being genetically homogeneous and closely related. Genealogical studies indicate extremely similar genetic profiles among Koreans, Chinese, and Japanese, making them genetically almost indistinguishable. Ancient samples located globally, analyzed using autosomal DNA, reveal that East and Southeast Asians form a single genetic cluster. Furthermore, they are close to populations in Oceania and Native Americans. Therefore, indigenous peoples, such as those in Brazil and North America, are closely related to Koreans, Chinese, and Japanese due to their shared origin, making them, in other words, sibling peoples. Now, addressing the biblical origin through ancient biblical genealogies and comparing them with the Hebrew-Aramaic text on the origins of all peoples according to the Bible, I will discuss the biblical origin of Koreans according to sacred scriptures. I have already covered their language, history, genome, genetics, and comparisons with other sibling populations. Now, I focus on the biblical ethnic origin of Koreans. Before beginning, I would like to emphasize that extreme Asian peoples, such as Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans, share the same genetic ancestors, as mentioned earlier. This aligns with the Bible, which also agrees with the origin of extreme Asian peoples. Focusing on the first biblical ancestor of the Koreans, it's interesting to note that this ancestor is the same as that of the ancient Chinese. This biblical character is called Sin or Sinim, one of the sons of Canaan and the great-grandson of Noah, also the grandson of Ham. Through ancient biblical genealogies, we discover that the Chinese are descendants of Sin. Although some may question if they truly belong to the lineage of Ham, the Hamites, I will explain further. The first ancestor of both South and North Koreans is Sin, the son of Canaan. The second ancient ancestor of the Korean people comes from the lineage of Japheth and is called Togarmah, one of the grandsons of Japheth and the son of Gomer, as described in Genesis chapter 10. Sin and Togarmah represent the lineages of Canaan and Japheth, respectively. The Canaanite groups remained in the Middle East, while the descendants of Sin, the Sinites or Chinese, migrated to the east, reaching China and dispersing to other nearby regions. Many experts claim that Japheth's wife played a crucial role in introducing the Asian factor, including the slanted eyes and distinctive features of Asian peoples. However, some also suggest that this Asian trait, including slanted eyes, may have been inherited from the descendants of Ham. Some African tribes descended from Ham, such as the Fulanese and Khoisan, are known for their slanted eyes, similar to some East Asian peoples. The origin of the Koreans is linked to these two biblical characters, with some East Asian peoples exhibiting a lighter skin tone from Japheth's descendants, represented by Togarmah, Japheth's grandson. The Asian genetics of Koreans may have come from both Japheth's wife and the descendants of Shem, resulting in different characteristics present in various East Asian groups. Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese are considered genetically related, descendants of Shem, the son of Canaan, and Togarmah, Japheth's grandson. In ancient maps and Jewish and Semitic traditions, the peoples of the Far East are often described as Sin, or Sinim, in Hebrew, and also as the House of Togarmah, in the Book of Ezekiel. The mixture of these lineages often resulted in the origin of indigenous peoples.
Oh yes, that was definitely an interesting and thought-provoking video right there. So that gives us a very smooth segue to the next part, the obvious African component of East Asia. So let us now turn our attention to the next clip. It's going to be of the Chinese geneticist Jin Li. Now, he has some really interesting information to share with the world. So here's what happened. I had uploaded this video presentation, putting the finishing touches on everything, but then boom, I got a notice from YouTube via email. Hey, this is copywritten material right here. You can only play it in the US. We'll give you that, but it's blocked in 283 countries. So hey, I have to pivot now. And anyway, instead of mentioning Jin and giving the video of Jin Li's comments on his findings and everything, here's an article right here, African Origin of China. So, I mean, I'm not even going to do a deep dive on this article right here, but hey, here's the screenshots of it. But I did link this article in my description. Okay, so now I got that part out of the way. This is the real thing here. Here's the video in question right here. It's a BBC production, and it's called The Incredible Human Journey, Part 2 of 5, Asia, right there. So you guys will love that. And I am linking this in the description. And again, it's a BBC production. It's called The Incredible Human Journey, Part 2 of 5. Now, when you do view that video right there, go to the time. Well, I'm going to give you the timestamps right here. 47 minutes, 24 seconds to the 50-minute mark, 35 seconds right there. That's for Jin Li's statement. Again, that's 47:24 and all the way to 50:35. 50 minutes, 35 seconds. And also, this is what I call the change right here. Okay, it's at the 25-minute, 3-second mark to the 26-minute, 14-second mark. That's for the change. You know, I would put these in my video presentation here. I mean, it fits nicely in between what I'm going over. But hey, if I did it the way I wanted to, I can only play it in the US and it'll be blocked elsewhere. You know, what good is that? All that work, time, and effort down the drain for nothing. But anyway, I may do like a little junk video where I just play these portions, you know, and then I don't know. Well, anyway, you guys enjoy. And remember, go view this video right here. The link to this is in the description. And here's the timestamps. You know, Jin's statement and the change that the narrator, the lady, the BBC reporter is speaking on. So enough of that. So as you just witnessed for yourself, the Chinese geneticist Jin Li, he had some little quest to prove how genetically special in his mind Chinese people were. He ended up finding out that they had an African origin right there. So let's continue to move forward. I want to give credit where credit's due. Without History, that channel right there, they did an amazing presentation on the African origin of Asians and Asia. So I just want to play 5 minutes right here. And like what I play, it doesn't even do that presentation he had justice. So the link to that video, or this video, the full entire video, will be in the description. So go check that out when you're done with this video presentation, of course. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it.
There are orders of magnitude more pieces of evidence that show that Africans, in multiple waves, brought civilization to Asia, especially well into the Far East. Beyond the classical civilizations in the Mediterranean and Mesoamericas, there is plentiful but little known and undeniable evidence of an African seeding of civilization in Asia, and an even more surprising evidence of Africans' presence all the way at the other side of the globe, in Japan.
For those who are wondering what he meant by the word seeding, just think of ignition or igniting a civilization or culture. You're the start of it. So that's what he means by seeding.
Again in the Rite of Zhou, more than a millennia after the arrival of the second wave of Africans to China, it is reported that a whole nation within China was black. Quote, "At the second place is rivers and lakes, Sichuanzhe. Its animals are scaly, its plants are oily, and its people are black and oily." End quote. And they also show up in archaeological skeletal remains in large numbers from the Xia, First Dynasty in China, to the Shang, Second Dynasty in China, before eventually being replaced by the Zhou, Third Dynasty in China. It is this last dynasty that was Mongoloid in type, and that came to replace all previous population types in China. Negroid skeletons dating to the early periods of southern Chinese history have been found in Shandong, Jianteng, Sichuan, Yunnan, Pearl River Delta, and Jiangxi, especially at the initial sites of Qingliangang, Qingliankang, and Majiabang, Maqiapang phases. The Qingliangang culture is often referred to as the Tawenkao, Dawenku culture of North China. The presence of Negroid skeletal remains at Dawenku sites make it clear that Negroes spread out from the north to South China. The Dawenku culture predates the Lungshan culture, which is associated with the Xia civilization. So this means that the predominant cranial type found in the early and pre-dynastic era of China, pre-Xia and Xia dynasties, were Africoid. To begin, we must understand how ancient China started and the dynasties that created it. There are three founding dynasties in ancient China: the Xia dynasty, 1900 to 1700 BC, Shang Yin dynasty, 1700 to 1050 BC, and the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty was the first dynasty founded by the Mongoloid people in China. The Xia and Shang dynasties are said to have been founded by a people who came from the west, those who have been called the Na Ki, which translates to Na, Black Ki, Man. This would imply the first two oldest dynasties of China, the ones that brought in the foundations of their civilization, including writing and pyramid building, were black African, or at the least ruled by black people from the West. That black civilization, as we have seen from research covered in previous videos, spanned from the Western Sahara to Kemet Egypt, Asia Minor, and as we shall see today, Far East. That is China. The same Nubian stock that started the Greek, Etruscans, and Sumerians. So what are some of the references to black people's presence in consistent rulership and deification in ancient China? In Southeast Asia and southern China, ancient skeletal remains represented the earliest inhabitants to be Australoids and Negrillo Negrito. By the beginning of the present Holocene period, the population in China could be differentiated and placed into categories designating Mongoloid in the north and Oceanic on black races in the south. Both of these groups evolved out of a common Upper Pleistocene substratum, as represented by the Zhuyang and Lucian skulls. More importantly is that by at least 2500 BC, Africoids of the Mediterranean and West African type entered this area by way of India. The skeletal evidence from the Shantung and Jiangsu, China, show the modern Africoid type, especially at the initial Qinglian King and Maqiabang phases. Notice that 2500 BC also happens to fall in the Old Kingdom of Kemet and the height of pyramid building. Other ancient Chinese sources describe the wealthy Mon Khmer who ruled the ancient kingdoms of Chamba, Funan, and Kampa, Lin Yi, as having curly hair and black skin. We see this description often in ancient text when referring to black people.
To put everything in layman's terms, he's talking about kind of like a transfer of power. We all grasp that concept right there. We have just the whole concept of like the Aboriginal people. We have people that came in and displaced or replaced the original people of that land right there. So he also mentions the numerous skeletons that are African type all over their province right there. Now, whenever we do these deep dives in ancient cultures, we always present, I guess, historical accounts or documents or written descriptions of the people that were originally inhabiting the area. China and Asia is no different. There are definitely records where they describe the appearance and complexion of the people who lived in that area, inhabited the area. So I'm glad he brought that out. I also appreciated the fact that he mentioned the first dynasty by the Mongoloid people, the Zhou dynasty right there. Now, overall, in this 4-minute clip, there was an overabundance of information here. Now, I know a lot of people still gonna doubt, especially the bored YouTube trolls that just goes around trying to bombard us with propaganda when we know better. Now, I did a video in part 1 where I highlighted the Negrito people. Now, these were Negro, melanated, whatever you want to call them. They were indigenous to the Asian continent. Let's say that. Now, I found this fact really revelatory right there, because I didn't even realize this right here until Without History came up with this fact right here. So let's go ahead and go into it.
The Zhou also conquered the Negritos of southern China. They defeated some but not all of the Negrito kingdoms, especially in Yunnan. The Chinese called the Negrito blacks Man and Kunlun. Many of these blacks presently live in Cochin, China, and Yunnan. The Xia people came in contact with these black inhabitants in 2116 BC. They are mentioned in the Zhou Li as living along the Yellow River. The name of the Yangtze River Basin area were also constantly at war with the Zhou. The Nam were closely related to the Tibetans of Sichuan. At this time, the Man states were ruled by princes. The arrival of black people in China in ancient times was significant enough in the Bronze Age to show up with such a high frequency in the literature and art of ancient and more recent historical China.
Man, that was a very good video presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed the information that was presented. So if you can, go over there and check out Without History's channel, and definitely check out the video that he posted on Asia. You know, you will get a ton of information, an overabundance of information right there. Now, from one good content creator to another, I'm definitely gonna go to Straight Up's channel right there and just see what he has to say on this subject, because hey, I was blown away when I first saw all of this information that he came up with in his presentation right there.
Check out this video, and this is of the late Qing dynasty, which was approximately 150 years ago. As you can see, this appears to be a man and his wife, Qing nobility. You can also see that the woman's face is painted with a white paint or cream. Very common in China, Korea, and Japan during this time period. You can also see that the man's complexion is very dark. No doubt her face was dark as well. Alright, I really like this photo because it shows so many of the typical Chinese soldiers of that time period. Many who probably had relatives alive today. Again, go ahead and stop the video and take a really close look. Alright, so this photo was taken during the time of the Boxer Rebellion, as many of these photos were. The year 1900 was really not that long ago. Alright, so I'm not going to comment on this one. It pretty much speaks for itself. Okay, so now here's a photo of two traditional Japanese men from circa 1868. They obviously had dark skin. One man seems to be subservient to the other. Again, here are typical Japanese people in the early 1900s. These photos were obviously staged by the photographer giving a glimpse of life in Japan at that time. This photo is of Japanese men and women. Check out these Japanese children and their complexions.
As you can indeed see right there, we are looking at older photos of Chinese people and Japanese people right there. Now, these Japanese people, yeah, they are definitely swarthy people, brunette colored or complected. So right now we want to kind of pivot a little bit. I'm not going to take too much time on the book Sex and Race, but I definitely want to highlight some important parts from this book right here. And I'm looking in the portion where the first Japanese Negroes right there. Now, I want to highlight this part right here in quotes where it talks about Imber says the Negro element in Japan is recognizable by the Negroid aspect of certain inhabitants with dark and often blackish skin, frizzly or curly hair. The Negritos are the oldest race of the Far East. Okay, now it's talking about Professor Monroe right there. One of the foremost students of Japanese life and culture says the Japanese are a mixture of several distinct stocks: Negro, Mongolian, breadth of face in orbital width, flat nose, prognatism, and brachiocephaly might be traced to the Negro stock right there. And then you also have these professors right there, Professor Dixon and others. They also think that the Japanese show a Negro strain right there. So that's interesting stuff, right? Now let's go over some theories and then compare and contrast that with truth. All right, now reading this, it says, however, no proof of the actual presence of a Negrito people has yet been unearthed in Japan, according to Professor Kazuo Tori of the University of Tokyo. He says what? Okay, he discounts the idea that the Negrito was one of the tribes of early Japan. So let's contrast that with let's see, what's this guy's name? Professor Asakawa of Yale University. Now, he says that as regards this theory that the Negritos may have influenced the Japanese indirectly through the Indo-Chinese immigrants who had intermingled with the Negrito people before they started from the south towards Japan. Okay, that's very, very plausible right there. Now, of course, when I read these book sources right here and I kind of skim over and jump over it, you guys feel free to pause the video and read the entire portion kind of on your own time, or even during this video viewing period right here, and always verify what I am saying right there, and feel free to correct any mistakes that I may make, or if I misspeak or anything, in the comment section. Okay, now I got that out of the way. Now let's see what Straight Up had to say regarding the Anyu people. And of course, I'm gonna go into the book Sex and Race and see what that has to say on the Anyu people, and we can compare and contrast everything. Okay, let's proceed.
Okay, so these next two photos are of the Anyu people. They are supposed to be indigenous to Japan. You can probably notice that they have different features than the typical Japanese we are used to seeing today. Again, look at the texture of their hair, not really straight, but more bushy.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this blue portion right here. And it says the oldest known inhabitants of Japan are the Anyus, who appear to be nearer the Caucasian than to any other race. But they also show signs of Negro and Mongolian admixture. Batchelor, a leading authority, describes them as being lighter in color than the average Japanese, but says that some of them are as dark as American Indians. Their noses too are flattish and their mouths wide and lips thick. The hair, which is long and thick, is coarse. Wavy hair is much prized, he says, and one who has curly hair is said to be a person having the hair of the gods. It is this kind of hair which, perhaps more than anything else, indicates a distant Negro ancestry in them. Naturally, curling hair may be set down as an almost sure index of Negro ancestry. So I'm going to drop down. The Japanese still have Negrito neighbors on the mainland, in the Philippines, and on other Pacific islands. Negrito remains have also been found on the nearby Ryukyu Islands as well as on Formosa. Furthermore, there are millions of Negroes, some of them of the purest type, in all this region. Also, the Indo-Chinese, the Southern Chinese, the Malays, though they have straight hair have mulatto complexions and faces that are clearly negroid. The Anyus themselves, as was said, show a negroid strain more or less distant. Therefore, is it not probable they mixed with some lighter colored invader, or after thousands of years of habitation in northern Japan, were changed to their present type? The Anyus once dominated Japan, as Japanese place names, which are Anyu, seem to indicate. Very, very good observation right there, and good queries also. Alright, so I want to conclude this video presentation by showing some very important portions from Straight Up's presentation right there on the melanated Asian people. So here we go, enjoy.
Here we can see a Manchu woman with two young girls helping to dress her. She is wearing face paint covering her complexion. In this photo, we can see multiple Chinese people. I focused in on the two women in the middle. One has face paint and one doesn't. In this photo, you can see several Chinese women. A couple of them don't have their faces painted. And here are more Chinese women. I really like this photograph of this Fucha woman from Fujian province, Japan. She reminds me of an AKA black woman that I know who has very similar features. So here's a photo of a young girl from Lao Cai, North Vietnam. Not what you think of regarding people of North Vietnam today. Here is a group of Filipino girls with various complexions and facial types. Here's a group of Filipino girls and boys from the 1930s. Here is a photo of men and children eating. As I mentioned before, you can see the complexions of the two children in the foreground are blown out and overexposed. Here are some more examples of Korean people. This is a very interesting photo of a Korean wedding. As you can see, I've pointed to three girls that have their faces painted, while the rest of the wedding party does not.
Here's the final assessment here. Asia had Negrito people. Now, Negritos were indigenous Negro people of Asia. We also find out that various tribes from the African continent migrated and were instrumental in sparking that civilization in motion right there. So we also learned that Mongoloids, they came later. They joined the party later right there. And proof is found in the skeletal remains, and there are various accounts that show that you melanin-rich people were very well represented across East Asia. And final point is that modern day East Asians, they're mostly mixed between, we know for a fact that Negrito African DNA is heavy. You saw the first clip of that doctor, the geneticist there, and Mongoloid DNA or genetics right there. So in essence, it's really two types of Negro and one Mongoloid. That's the mixture. That's your modern day East Asian right there. All right, guys, make sure you check out the video Dark-Skinned Asian People on Straight Up's channel. And then when you're done with that one, check out Without History, his channel, and more specifically, the video presentation episode 16 on shocking genetic studies show that the ancient China and Japan was started by the people from ... Both of those video presentations were very informative, and you'll learn a lot from them. Now, it's enough for this video presentation here today. I'll catch you guys later. Take care.